Hello guys, welcome back. Today I'm going to be talking about Nill, his trades, his free agent acquisitions, everything about him. I'm going to be reviewing how well he's done as a GM, because he's part of my favorite team, the Dallas Stars. I'm hoping, I looked through his stuff. We'll get into what his trades were all about, what he did, and how good of a GM he really is. Now, personally, I really think that Nill has done a really good job with the Dallas Stars. I mean, that he's done really quite well. Some of his trades have worked out very nicely. He hasn't been the best GM in the league, but he's been in the top 10, really. I think that he's done a fantastic job leading this team, and just getting the all-around players that we needed for some success for these seasons. And I think that he's done really well. I think that he deserves a lot of credit. And, that one season where we didn't do well, I just thought it was all on the goaltending. But other than that, I think that he constructed a pretty good team. Now let's start with one of his first trades, the infamous Tyler Seguin deal. Now the Tyler Seguin deal, which most notably sent Joe Morrow and Louis Eriksson to Boston, also bringing back Tyler Seguin. There was a couple of other pieces that went back to Boston, but of course they didn't do really anything. Nobody on that trade is still on the Boston Bruins, which is just terrible for the Bruins, man. That trade is probably one of the worst in history. Tyler Seguin might become a Hall of Famer. He could very well become a Hall of Famer. It's a very bad trade that'll probably haunt the Bruins for a little while. But hey, they won the cup. They were desperate. It didn't work. We know what happens. Now another one he made that year was the Jason Spezza deal, trading from Ottawa. He had to give up Alex Chason, Nick Paul, and a second-round pick in 2015, which ended up being the Devils' pick, which they selected Mackenzie and Blackwood. He hasn't done too much. I think he's done well in the AHL, something like that, but he hasn't made the big leagues yet, and, it's still early. That was 2 years ago, but still. The trade, I don't know if it's worked out quite yet. Who knows if Mackenzie becomes this elite goaltender, but I don't know. It was a decent trade, I'd say. That cap hit is, I don't know if it's quite worth it. It's still for a couple more years. And I'm hoping that, Spezza kind of turns it on a little bit. He's been doing okay these past couple of games, I guess. But, Spezza just needs to find his offensive game. He's already pretty good defensively. I think that's his biggest strength. And Chason is a decent player for Ottawa. Nick Paul, I think, went to San Jose or something like that. And, it was a decent trade for the Stars. I think that was pretty good. But, hey, you got a star. But you didn't get a star. You got a great second-line forward. But he's at 7.5. It might have just been a cap dump for Ottawa. And then they bring in Dion Phaneuf, which is just ridiculous. But, yeah, it was a decent trade by him. Now, the trade that sent Jason Mears from San Jose came to Dallas. And we gave up Brandon Dillon. And pretty sure it was a third round for 2016. We got a third rounder for 2016. I think it was Frederick Carlson, something like that. They haven't turned out so far. It was last year, but they haven't turned out quite yet. I think they might have signed him. I think that he's still in the Swedish league or something like that. I don't know too much about him, but we'll have to see if that pick actually turns out. Brendan Dillon has stayed with the Sharks while Demers has been traded a couple of times, he signed in Florida, then he was traded to Arizona, where he is now. It's going to definitely depend on if that third-round pick, Frederick Carlson, actually turns out, and if he does actually turn out to be an NHL player, a decent one, who knows who wins that trade. It'd probably be going on the edge to Dallas, but who knows at that point. It's a very straight trade. You can make a case for either team, really. Now, then another move is the Stars acquiring Patrick Sharp and Stephen Johns for the Blackhawks for Trevor Daley and Ryan Garbutt. You could say, honestly, I think that the Stars won that trade. Daley, that the Blackhawks had to give up like a year later or something like that. They didn't have him for all that long. And Sharp had to be released because he didn't do that well, but he did well that first season with us. And Johns is still a decent, he's an okay, he's a decent 7th defenseman, but he's an okay top 6 guy. And I think he's a decent defenseman, and he's still with us, which definitely helps the trade. The Blackhawks didn't really get anything out of it except for Daly's contributions, but I don't know if anybody's really won that trade, especially we haven't seen too much of Johns, to be honest. We haven't seen a few seasons from him. I want to see more of him, to be honest, because I haven't really gotten a great opinion of him, just because I haven't seen him play all that much. Now, this past trade deadline, Jim Nill traded Patrick Eaves for a conditional second-round pick, which ended up being a first-round pick, because Anaheim Ducks made the conference final. Now, I was rooting for the Ducks just solely because it would become a first-round pick if they did make the conference final. And honestly, looking back at it, it is a fantastic deal. We don't know if really Eaves wanted to re-sign. Maybe he did. He seemed to be decently happy in Dallas. I miss Eaves, but Jake Ottinger is going to be fantastic. He's going to be the goalie of the future in a few years. I think he'll be great. It was if it turned out to be a second, it definitely would have been a little bit of just a ball buster. But since it became a guy like Jake Ottinger, who knows what happens? Who knows if that guy turns out to be a stud? Who knows if he becomes a league guy? Who knows what happens? But man, it was a good trade. I feel like it was fantastic right now. They still have Sharp or Eaves. Of course, he's recovering from that disease that he has, where his nervous system attacks, whatever. But he's going to come back probably for the Ducks. Who knows when? But he will. He will still be playing. And that's still good for the Ducks. But the second, which becomes Jake Ottinger, definitely helps the team. Now, Jordie Benn for a fourth and pattern from the trade deadline as well last season. I don't know what to really think of this trade because the Montreal Canadiens just got slower with this trade. I don't know why they did it. We got Pattern, who is a decent guy, just a sub in. He's a decent seventh guy. Eighth guy is a really solid one. But I really love Jordie Benn. I think that he's a good, just a solid defenseman. But I don't know why the Canadiens really did that trade, just because they got slower. But, he's still there in Montreal. I still hope he does well, because I really like him. But, I don't know who won that trade. The fourth is pretty irrelevant, but who knows if that turns out to be anything. We'll definitely have to wait and see. But, at this point, I don't know if they truly won that trade. I don't know if anybody really truly won that trade. But yeah, there's really no victor there, really. Unless that fourth turns out, of course. Now, the big one, Mark Mafat for a 2020 second-round pick, and Dylan Ferguson, the trade from the Vegas Golden Knights. Of course, Vegas they picked Mark Mafat from the expansion draft. They traded him to Dallas, where we gave up a 2020 second, which is so far off in the future, probably won't turn out to be anything in, until 2022 at the earliest. And then Ferguson, who might become an okay goaltender. Seventh round picked goalies are really just the worst wild card you can ever get. The latter rounds are really just wild cards for every single pick, and most of them do become just blah. But sometimes you see guys like Ferguson who might become something. I don't know. Ferguson might become something. I have hopes for him. I hope he does well. But I like Mark Mafat, and I wouldn't say he's been doing really good this season. He hasn't gotten any points, I don't think. But he's solid defensively. I just hope he gets better. But yeah, I like that trade right now, because especially that second round pick being in 2020, it definitely helps. It's a long time from now. I'm still hoping that they're good, so that second round pick doesn't become something even better, because it's in the early pick. But yeah, I think they want it in the now, but we'll have to see in the future. Of course, the few signings, extending Lettinen, signing Niemi, those two were just terrible things. He really didn't have that many goaltender options, so I can see why he did it. But to that much money, man, they didn't really have that great of seasons to warrant $5 million each. Not even $5 million, more than that. And I don't know why he signed those, getting $10 million in two goaltenders. It just doesn't really work that way in the NHL, unless you're just willing to sacrifice really good depth there. And I don't like those two signings, but I don't know why they, because they didn't really have goaltender options as a free agent. Those were the only two options, but I don't know why he signed Niemi, why didn't he just keep Lettinen as a starter. We will never really know, but I don't know if it really hurt them. They could have gotten more in that 2015 season when they were really good and they got that 109-point season. maybe they could have gotten a little bit like more just salary, but a little more wiggle room there. But who knows what would have happened if they had the extra cap space. Maybe they go out and give up a first round pick for somebody, and that first round pick becomes something special. So it could have been a good thing, or it could have been a bad thing. But those two signings are just kind of weird, right? And you got this past off season where he signed Radulov, he signed Hansel, he signed Pitlick, and of course he signed Ben Bishop, where he was just dealing, and there's a lot of good free agent signings. I think that they've turned out decent so far. Hansel hasn't been great, but I can see where he's getting the face-off wins and the physicality. I can really see that, and he's leaning on the bench. I know when players do that, and Hansel is a big part of that, and that he's been decent. And Radulov is starting to pick up the pace here. He's starting to get a couple of goals in his past couple of games. He's looked pretty decent, and I think that he could be one of the best stars. And probably he could probably play the best here that he's ever played. He has a lineup to do so. My final rating for him, I think that Jim Nill is a fantastic GM. They should definitely keep him. I was never on board of firing him. I was always just on board of, I don't know, I just didn't think that the coach really worked out. But, man, I think that Jim Nill has done a great job. He's done a very just solid job, and I'm hoping that it all works out for him. I don't want him to be fired, of course, but it might happen if something just goes south, but we will never know. And maybe next season it just turns all south, and it's always just random. You never know what will happen, and I think that's a fantastic GM. I think they should hold on to him, but you know, you never know what will happen if the start off 0-7 like the Coyotes or something. Next season, who knows what happens, but I think that they should keep him for as long as they can, and they definitely got a good GM on their hands. But that's going to be it for today, guys. Guys, enjoy. Make sure you leave a like. Guys, if you enjoy, make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you guys later. Goodbye.